Welcome to episode 5 of Psyche Snacks. This is the podcast where we discuss mental illnesses and how to help those struggling with them. Today we will be discussing major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. So, as we always start with the first topic, what is major depressive disorder? It's also known as depression in, common lingo, but it's more accurately depression. It it's more accurate that depression is a symptom of this disorder along with several others. So, depression, as we've discussed before, is a symptom of PTSD as well, and some anxiety disorders. And just like this, depression is a symptom of major depressive disorder. It's just the main symptom along with a few others. According to Oxford Dictionary, it is a mental condition characterized by a persistently depressed mood and long-term loss of pleasure or interest in life, often with other symptoms such as disturbed sleep, feelings of guilt or inadequacy, and suicidal thoughts. So this one's special to me because I've actually been diagnosed with it. So I have some personal experience with this that I can talk about. Moving on, what are some symptoms of major depressive disorder? There's persistent low mood, feelings of sadness, emptiness, or hopelessness. Typically, these feelings come about for no reason. All of a sudden, in my experience, there's suddenly one day I just felt very down and I didn't feel much at all. I was very apathetic. It's like the logic and thought side of my brain was working perfectly, and then the emotion side of my brain was just on zero. So, sometimes in my experience with depression, there was a reason to feel bad, but the state of feeling bad lasted longer than it should have and was consistent. So, one thing would set me down, and then I would be down for days, weeks, months, just from that one thing. And then, of course, during that time, it would pile up, leading to a depressive episode. And sometimes, in these feelings of depression, in these periods, there wasn't a reason to feel depressed, but my mind would try to find a reason. I would suddenly be low and be like, why do I feel this way? Oh, it must be because of this. And then the overthinking would cause me to have panic attacks, leaving me exhausted and more apathetic than before. More symptoms, a loss of interest in activities or hobbies. So, without feeling, it's hard to have energy and take care of yourself, let alone pursue hobbies that once brought enjoyment. And this is one of the things I checked off in 7th grade. We just, all the 7th graders had to gather in the auditorium, and they did a little panel on mental health. And one of the things they did was have everyone fill out a paper. It was like, if you mark more than 5 out of 7 of these, then talk to a counselor. You might be experiencing some of these symptoms. I marked off 5 out of 7 and then talked myself out of one. I'm like, yeah, but no, I don't have depression. Why would that matter? And so I unmarked one. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I probably should have sought help. But that's not who I am. Another symptom is a lack of energy or feeling slowed down. So after a while feeling bad, I just didn't have the energy anymore, so I just stopped feeling and succumbed to the numbness. That rhymes. And sometimes the feeling came back a little bit, and I was so used to the numbness, so having feeling was uncomfortable. It was another thing for me to deal with, and I rather wanted to feel bad or feel nothing at all, whether it was good or bad, because that was where I was comfortable. It came with difficulty sleeping, waking up too early, or oversleeping. I would wake up early after having bizarre nightmares, and then I would just go into another room, sit in a cardboard box, and listen to music, longing to feel something, or at least have the music understand me. And it was probably one of the weirdest things I did, but sitting in a cardboard box brought at least a little serotonin to my life, weirdly enough. Difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. School became harder, but I was somehow high functioning and kept my grades up. Probably because school was the only thing that I had as a day-to-day consistent thing, and so that was something that pushed me forward. Changes in appetite or weight. I lost a lot of weight And then when I realized I was underweight, um, my friend did an intervention like, you need to gain weight, and so I ate ice cream every night, and then I was 3 pounds less heavy because I probably tried to compensate for all the ice cream I was eating by eating less outside of ice cream. So, um, it was mostly it was just random how eating more unhealthy food made me lose weight, and it didn't feel like I had something I had control over. Thoughts of death or suicide, feelings like what's the point of life if you don't have any feeling. Feeling brings a lot of flavor to life. Physical aches, pains, headaches, cramps, or digestive problems. This one was a big one for me. I think it's because the feelings, that is emotions, are meant to be felt. I used to not feel things. I would only feel, I wouldn't feel things physically. I would feel things, I could be happy mentally, but there was no physical representation of it. And after I entered a depressive episode, I wouldn't even feel the feelings emotionally. I just was completely apathetic. And just as in the absence of hearing or sight, the mind will sometimes fill in the gaps with hallucinations. In the absence of feeling, one's body can fill in the gaps with aches and pains. Additionally, it's easy to be malnourished when you don't have appetite or that is the emotional drive to eat, um, especially the right foods, which can cause physical symptoms. And um, I experienced these kind of things a lot in high school. I would randomly be walking to class and just feel abdominal cramps, or my fingers would hurt very painfully, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't have an explanation, and I just thought it was normal to have random aches and pains with no source or explanation. Another symptom is feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, irritability, frustration, restlessness, slowed thinking, speaking, or body movements. Sometimes in the times when there's no reason to feel bad, your mind will wander and want to have an explanation for why the feeling is there or the lack of feeling is there. And it will make up scenarios, situations, of things that you did and make you feel bad about it because it's hard to comprehend, feeling nothing for no reason. I can recall a specific example where I was texting a friend just about something that was going on in my life. And they texted back, all right, a simple word. And my brain was diseased at the time, to put it frankly, because although that it was just one word, my brain interpreted it as I wouldn't care if something bad happened to you. It made no sense. It was completely out of context in the situation, and it was just my brain trying to make up something to explain the how bad I was feeling. Moving on to what causes depression. So one of them is genetics. My grandmother and siblings both have my grandmother and sibling both have depressions, along with my mother and sister having their own experience with episodes. Also, life events. There have been a few events, namely relating to stars' birthdays and a certain dress I have, that have overwhelmed my ability to cope with my emotions, causing me to go into states of depression. Again, it can be small things that just last longer than they're supposed to, and I wasn't able to recover from them. Also, personality traits. So, those who are pessimistic, self critical, or have low self esteem are more likely to develop depression. I never thought of myself as a pessimist, more like a realist. So, this one didn't really apply to me. Medical conditions. Some medical conditions like cancer, heart disease, chronic pain, and diabetes can occur with symptoms of depression. Medications. Some medications like sleeping pills and antihypertensives can increase risk of depression, and substance use. Alcohol, cannabis, and other drugs can make depression worse. So, how does one treat depression? Well, I say one, like anyone can do it, but it's how does one get treated for depression? That's better. Psychotherapy is a good one. Some studies I've looked into have said that um, there's psychotherapy and there's medication, uh, but the two hand in hand are the most effective. I never had the two hand in hand at once. I did some counseling, and at a different time I took medication. So some common antidepressants are SNRIs and SSRIs. There's a few first generation ones like tricyclic antidepressants. That's when you get amitriptyline. but those have been shown to cause tardive dyskinesia later in life, which is just involuntary movements and sounds. And so those aren't really fun side effects. But I was put on an SSRI. I took fluoxetine, and it, like all antidepressants, has a black box warning. And the warning is that it can increase suicidality in younger adults and teenagers. Now, it's a weird thing to think about. Like, hey, you had one job to stop this person from being depressed, and here you are making their symptoms worse. And the big theory for it is that, and this is what I experienced as well, the antidepressants work most in the brain. That's where they're supposed to work, because that's it's all in your head. It needs to treat your head and the neurotransmitter imbalance in your nerves in your head. And unfortunately, there is a thing called a blood-brain barrier, or BBB. And that's where there's a the blood cannot get directly to the things from your blood can't get directly into your brain unless the brain has deemed it safe, and that can take 4 to 6 weeks. So, in those before those 4 to 6 weeks come around and the antidepressants can start working in your head, it first starts working in your body. So, someone who's mentally ill first gets the boost in energy from the serotonin physically. And I felt this. When I sat in my cardboard box, it would make me happier. I could feel feelings physically, not mentally. And so that was a interesting thing that I was not used to. I was finally feeling feelings with my feelings. And but I was still mentally ill, and so I had this extra energy, and I didn't have the mental capacity to keep myself from thinking of bad things. Hence why it can increase suicidality in people, especially during those first few weeks, or after someone increased their dosage. Eventually, 4 to 6 weeks came around. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I kept a journal during the entire time, so I could probably look it up. But I'm not going to do that right now, because then I'd have to edit out a really long pause, and that's a lot of work, and I don't like to edit these things very much, and you could probably tell. But eventually 4 to 6 weeks came around, and it was better. I was a lot better, and I was able to settle down a bit. So, in that time, if it weren't for the boundaries I'd set for myself and the support system I had, I wouldn't have survived. And that's just plainly there. I would have died. But once the side effects wore off, I felt normal again. I was able to develop better coping strategies. It caused me to have lactose intolerance randomly, and a few years later, I had enough skills built up that I was able to stop taking it and have less lactose intolerance. Moving on, that's the whole medication side of things. There's also brain stimulation therapy that has shown very promising results. So there's ECT and TMS. TMS being transmagnetic stimulation. But yeah, they've been proven significantly effective in treating people. I actually had the opportunity, emphasis on opportunity, to go down to California and be part of a test group getting TMS to get treated for depression. But I didn't want to go down to California, so I turned it down. But TMS uses magnetic pulses to activate areas of the brain that are underactive with people with depression. Just like doing bicep curls enlarges your bicep, these pulses exercise those parts of the brain to get it working stronger. And this is something I've learned in my psychology classes. That eventually you rewire your nerves to work properly. By rewiring or building up that part of the brain, it doesn't just atrophy when you stop exercising it, your brain learns to use it. And it also works with people who have trouble with their balance. What they did was they put a little electrode on their tongue, and when that electrode buzzed, their balance came back. I could be misremembering this, so feel free to fact check me. But eventually, they were able to be tapered off of the electrode, and their balance was fixed. They had rewired their nerves to recognize how to balance again. And so this is a very powerful thing that our nerves are able to be rewired. Another example is my jaw. This is a more physical thing. Like when I broke my jaw, it damaged my facial nerve. And so it was a blessing because I couldn't feel that side of my face until the nerve healed. And the nerve wasn't done healing until my also jaw was done healing. And so I was naturally numbed. I didn't need any painkillers and everything was great. But when the nerve came back, it came back damaged. So when I touch my cheek near my lip, I can feel it back in my ear. And when I touch my ear, I can feel it in my cheek by my lip. And so my brain has learned those things are at the same place, which is weird and it feels really freaky. But the sensation has died down, and the more I touch those parts of my face, the more my brain learns, oh wait, those are in different places. Because how could my hand be over here and over there at the same time? And so the brain is very powerful, and nerves are super smart, I guess. Another treatment for depression is light therapy. Um, and when I first thought of light therapy, I thought flashing lights and strobe lights, and wait, no, that's just an epilepsy warning. But no, light therapy is literally just getting sunlight, especially in the morning. It's essential for keeping a sleep hormone balance or circadian rhythm, as well as keeping vitamin D levels up. In areas or times of the year when sunlight is rare, special UV lights can be used to mimic the sun's rays. That's not a tanning bed. Tanning beds cause cancer. Not a good idea. But and then there's also vitamin D supplements that my coworker swears by and tells me I should take. Well, no, tells my other coworker she should take. But that vitamin D is a very good thing for keeping people happy. There's a reason why seasonal affective disorder exists. It's where during a certain season, typically winter, people get depressed. That is seasonal depression because there's not as much sunlight, and so they don't have those vitamin D levels to keep them happy. And then the last thing that can treat depression is lifestyle changes. Staying connected with friends and family, even on days when you don't want to be alive, knowing your friends and family would be hurt if you were gone, can be enough to keep you going, and it was enough to keep me going. Exercising regularly. I do this now, and it has significantly increased my levels of happiness and quality of life, and it's really good to be. It's really nice to be able to do a bunch of push-ups. Maintain regular eating and sleeping habits. Again, it helps balance the sleep hormones, maintain its circadian rhythm, keep energy levels up, and make sure you're eating enough even when you have no appetite. Avoid or limit alcohol and illicit drugs because those are super bad for your health. And and then also make time for activities you enjoy to avoid losing interest and losing flavor of life. And nowadays, every once in a while I feel myself getting bored and not enjoying a certain thing. But that's why I have a whole list of things I enjoy doing, because if I don't enjoy doing one all of a sudden, at least I can fall back on another one. And then I'll find my joy for the first one later on as I do the second one and the third, fourth, fifth. I have a lot of hobbies, to say the least. Moving on. How can you help? How can us, as just peers, help someone who is struggling with symptoms of depression or major depressive disorder? We could check in on them and let them know that we care for them. The reassurance could be the only thing keeping them around. And sometimes they can forget. And sometimes they may feel, no, I shouldn't have to tell them this. They should know this. But that reassurance is vital because you never know what could be going on in their brain. They could be translating all rights into I wouldn't care if you were gone. And you don't want that to happen. You want to assure them, I care about you and I want you to be here. Make plans with them so they always have something to look forward to, especially if those plans involve their hobbies in some way. That way you can keep that light, a fire in them, and that way they don't just succumb to a monotonous life, which makes it easier for them to be apathetic. Listen to their struggles actively and empathetically, as always. Encourage professional help, again, typically very important, especially based on severity, and if they are showing signs that they may hurt themselves or others. Encourage them to be patient if they've been put on medication, as it can take 4 to 6 weeks for for the medications to work, and it gets worse before it gets better because the black box warning. Help them stay active. It encourages exercise, encourages going out in the sunlight. Make a plan for the bad days. Um, as as important for anyone to have, it's like a 72-hour kit but for emotions. A list of coping strategies, a few activities you can do, or videos you can watch when you're sad that bring you happiness, um, and a few people you can reach out to if things go bad. Help them connect with others, be supportive of the small things they do for themselves. Um, you may tell, you may feel the urge, let's see, they may be saying, um, wow, things are so hard lately and I haven't done my homework, and you may feel the need to tell them, like, oh, you need to go do your homework right now. But if they're struggling, sometimes just the fact that they got out of bed is a huge accomplishment, and you should laud that. Like, you got out of bed this morning. Congrats. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do, and you did it. You brushed your teeth. You took a shower. The small things are sometimes the most important things for just keeping them around and keeping life okay for them. And then, of course, take care of yourself and protect your own mental health so that you can do your best job taking care of them without sacrificing yourself. Because in the end, you can't help anyone if you don't first help yourself. And if you're not in the mental state to be able to help someone, then you need to communicate that. And likely they will understand, because if they're coming to you in need of help, then they probably understand that they also would not be in the right mental state to be able to help you. And then, of course, learn more about depression in general, whether through this podcast or through your own research online, or from the person you're trying to help as well, or from personal experience. How does depression relate to bipolar disorder? Moving on. As mentioned earlier, depression is a symptom of many other mental disorders, including bipolar disorder. So, what is bipolar disorder? It's a mental condition marked by alternating periods of elation and depression. So, there's two kinds of episodes. There's the manic episode, or mania, which is the opposite of depression. It can last for around a week. And then there's depression, which can last for around 2 weeks. And of course, this is, by around, I mean anywhere from a couple hours to a couple months. Uh, but typically, on average, it's about a week or 2 weeks. And then there's also people with cyclothemic disorder who experience hypomania instead of mania, which is just less intense mania for a shorter amount of time. So, what are symptoms of bipolar disorder? More specifically, they're extreme mood shifts. And again, you may think, oh, someone's hot then cold. They're uh, happy one moment and then they're super angry the next. Uh, that could be bipolar disorder, or it could be that they were putting on a mask and then suddenly that came down and things went bad. They could just not have a very good temper. It's just important not to diagnose your friends. Um, the most let's talk about the mania versus the depression part of it. So mania is extreme happiness, elation, irritability, racing thoughts, talking quickly, needing less sleep, feeling more important or powerful, taking risks like overspending or making major life decisions like changing your major in college or quitting your job to start a business and trading NFTs. I had a manic episode that lasted a few days in which I needed less sleep. I remember being hanging out with friends, and then they noticed my pupils were dilated at um, different sizes, which is a symptom of excess norepinephrine in the system, um, which is part of what may cause manic episode, and also why some antidepressants can cause manic episodes because they can increase norepinephrine in the system, especially serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. But I got home that night, and it was an hour after I usually went to bed, and I just thought I could run a marathon easily, and then I wouldn't even be tired at the end of it. Instead of running a marathon at 9 p.m., I decided to do my chemistry homework, and I had been putting that off for weeks because I wasn't feeling well. But I was feeling pretty bad actually, and um, I was able to do the chemistry homework really easily. I remember I barely even had to think about it. I was just comprehending things like crazy. And then I went to bed and I thought, oh, I'm going to be so tired in the morning because I stayed up an extra hour. I wasn't. I woke up in a snap. I was out of bed and I was having a great time. But as great as this was, it was also scary because that wasn't myself. I didn't feel like I had connected to myself. And then also I came with the irritability. Like I was thinking so much faster than everyone else, speaking so much faster than everyone else, and it felt like anyone who got in the way of that was, getting in the way, and I just wanted people to speak faster, get to the point. Um, but yeah, I talked faster, I thought faster, I felt more alive, and um, it was a pretty interesting period. Um, Typically depression follows right after though, and it did. But moving on, there's the depression side of bipolar disorder, which we just talked about. Feeling sad, hopeless, worthless, having trouble concentrating or making decisions, feeling slowed down or restless, and sleep too much or too little. Bipolar disorder also comes with anxious distress, melancholy, psychosis, rapid cycling, which is having 4 mood episodes in a year. Um, because bipolar disorder, it's not always one or the other. It's not always mania or depression. It's just that these periods can happen. And whereas typical is a stable mood and just, you know, right in the middle throughout the entire year with small bursts of happiness or sadness. Whereas they go to extremes. What can cause bipolar disorder? Genetics, brain chemistry, that's imbalances in serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, as mentioned before, can affect pupil size. Environment, that is life-altering events, extreme stress, or overwhelming problems that can trigger or worsen symptoms. Substance abuse, a lot of people with bipolar disorder abuse alcohol or drugs, which can cause symptoms similar to mania, hypomania, and depression. Medications, some antidepressants, as mentioned before, and other psychiatric medications can cause mania or hypomania as a side effect or withdrawal symptom. Sleep deprivation, this can trigger a manic episode. Don't go about trying it again. I didn't have a great time in my manic episode. And also, manic episodes can have significant health side effects because of this imbalance in chemicals, and less need for sleep, and that can physically alter your body, and it's not exactly healthy. So don't go about depriving yourself of sleep to trigger a manic episode. Um, Also, pulling all nighters is really bad, and if you just look at the health side effects of taking one all nighter, it's not worth it. Moving on, how is bipolar disorder treated? Medications. So lithium, straight from the periodic table, it's a mood stabilizer. And then there's also antipsychotics, and these can help manage mood swings. Um, Again, there's lithium, valproic acid, divalproic sodium, carbamazepine, and lamotrigine, all pretty common medications that my pharmacy sells quite a bit. There is psychotherapy, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy. And then there's lifestyle changes. Again, regular exercise, planning activities, improving diet, getting more sleep, sticking to a routine, making times for relaxation, mindfulness, hobbies, and social plans. And in times when someone can't sleep because of a manic or hypomanic episode, just sitting in a dark room so that they can at least simulate that and let the brain know that it's time for it to shut off. How would someone like us help someone struggling with bipolar disorder? Well, as I always say, active listening and empathy. Educate yourself on the condition, be patient through their mood swings, encourage professional help and self help, reduce their stress in any way you can, establish a routine with them, make plans for when things are bad, spend time with them, and help them recognize symptoms to help um, them get help as soon as possible. You may think they're about to go into a manic episode, and you can let them know, hey, I think you're about to go into a manic episode. What's your plan for this scenario? Or hey, it looks like you're about to go into a depressive episode. What's your plan for this scenario? And just catching it early on to make sure that they're taking their meds and they have their coping strategies lined up. In conclusion, bipolar disorder is like depression with a side of mania. Delicious just like this Psyche snack. Hope you enjoyed.